On today's edition of India Revival Mission, we're going to be chatting with CMD at Havells, Mr. Anil Rai Gupta. Mr. Gupta, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Hope all's well with you and the Havells family.
All well, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
November to December, as I understand, is normally the period of sourcing, procuring for consumer durables. With the increase now in commodity prices, what kind of an increase have you had on your raw material? And if indeed prices don't soften from here, is it bound to impact your margins, or are you looking at a complete pass-through to customers?
Well, it may impact margins in the short term because, the trade also, because as you rightly said, is the season of stocking. It's not the real season for sales of air conditioners. The sales start in February and March. So at this point of time, it will be difficult to completely pass on the raw material cost increase. So there will be, temporarily some amount of pressure on the margins and sales also because, consumers will hold on to the purchase. But I think when the season comes, definitely, the kind of raw material price increase which has happened, it has to be passed on. Otherwise, manufacturers can't survive. So over the next few months, we will see some price increases.
Well, I'm just going to take a pause and a short detour and come back to the conversation with Anil Rai Gupta from Havells. But guess what? The Nifty has finally done it. We've made it to the 14,000 mark just when you thought we're not going to make it and the wait was going on for the last 2 days. Yesterday, to be fair, we were practically already there. So we're closing in 2020 with a fab finish. 40,000 here, believe it or not. What have we not seen this year? Besides the pandemic, from those March lows, the solid recovery that the markets have given. Today, though, don't go by the percentage move. It's just a very marginal move. We're at best flattish, but we managed to hit the 14K mark. And I think that really is the key takeaway. As I see on my screens, it's ICICI Bank, HDFC, DRL, Cipla, which are holding out. Reliance, after being in consolidation mode for quite a few days, it's finally made a push of about 0.5%. And given the giant that it is and the weightage on the index that it has, even that 0.5% uptick has done the magic and made us go to that 14K mark, just easing off from there. It's been a very, very flattish day from the start up until now. Let's only hope we make another attempt at 14K. It was just a touch and go moment, and from there we've receded. But sectorally today, like I was earlier as well pointing out, it's clearly a pharmaceutical day. Well, the breath is not doing a whole lot. It's Auto Pharma. It's a solid 3.5% move coming in there. And besides that, there's not a big percentage move anywhere. It's HDFC, DRL, ICICI Bank. They are the leaders within the Nifty today, which have managed to make it to that 14K mark, at least in today's trading session. But I'm going to cut back to our conversation with Mr. Anil Rai Gupta. Listen in. Price hike to actually pass on to the consumers for it to not impact demand. How is it that you try and balance the two?
Well, it is a careful balance one has to make because while the demand has been strong in the last 4 or 5 months, ever since the lockdown opened up, but the fact is that the raw materials have shot up for steel, for copper, for aluminum. So most of these, or plastics also, most of these component prices have gone up, and hence, it has to be passed on. Now, you rightly say, manufacturers always have this in mind that whether this kind of a price increase would impact demand, this has to be seen. So it's a careful balance of what can be passed on, what can you sustain to hold on to your margins to at least some extent. And but we also have seen cost outs in the last few months, especially post pandemic. So there'll be a balance between cost, raw material increase as well as pricing.
Mr. Gupta, what's been your observation on ground? Because up until now, all the channel checks that we are running, not just with consumer durable companies, but across categories, it seems that it's the rural end of the economy or the markets which continues to hold up. And you're not really seeing a material pickup when it comes to the urban markets. Are you witnessing the same trends?
There is no doubt that the small towns in the rural areas have, shown significant, improvement over last year as compared to the other towns. So, while this shift is happening even in the metro towns, we are seeing a shift from the unorganized sector to the organized sector. So we are seeing growth in the big towns as well. Maybe the overall demand has not increased that much, but maybe there are movements of market share. And so it's difficult to actually see that. But definitely small towns, B and C class towns, rural areas have shown far higher growth as compared to the metro towns.
But would you describe and categorize it as pent-up demand, festive demand, or do you think the demand push is way higher and it's going to continue beyond the festive season as well?
Well, I think the fourth quarter will be the real test because, initially there was pent-up demand, then there was festive demand. Now the raw materials shooting up in most of the product categories. Now it could be a combination of some delayed purchase by the consumer, however, some increased stocking by the channel to take advantage of the old prices, and they can foresee that the new prices will be coming in. So while the channel may have stocked a little bit extra to gain a little higher margin, but the fourth quarter will be the real test because that's post-festive season, that's post-pent-up demand. So I think what we see in the fourth quarter, that will be the real demand.
Just an extension of the point that we were talking about, because other than commodity prices, the added worry is also about shortage of certain components. Are you expecting a disruption then in that case?
Not in many of the product categories, maybe a couple of product categories, for example, some electronic components and, disruption of some supply chain. But I think most of the product categories, we are all sorted.
Tell me, what's been your observation in terms of what kind of products have people gravitated towards? Is it more air purifiers than anything else, or is it more the pent-up demand-led kind of white goods which have been bought? What have been the trends since lockdown up until now that you personally have witnessed in terms of a consumer behavior or consumer buying pattern that you could tell us about?
So what we've seen, a few trends that we've seen. Air purifiers is a very, very, localized market and a very short-term market because, this happens during mostly northern India and mostly during the winter times. But what we see is that there is an upgradation of the domestic appliances that consumers use. I believe that a lot of time has been spent in the homes by both the family earners. And I think they need their comfort. They need the right appliances for making or for cooking or for something. So I think, or even washing clothes or washing dishes. So they need the right comfort. And I think what initially we were thinking post-pandemic that there could be a down trade towards buying cheaper products. In fact, we've seen the other way around that people are wanting to buy better quality products, better brands, better features. That's happening. Secondly, we've also seen the reason that we've seen more demand in the small towns and rural areas because a lot of people have moved from metro towns where they were working to their own hometowns from where they are remotely working. And then from there, when they are spending more time in the house, they suddenly have the need of either a refurbishment or addition of some appliances. So a lot of things have happened. So, you could call it pent-up demand, or I think it's just, higher comfort that the consumer is now seeking post-pandemic.
So you think that India has the ability to be an export hub, or would you say that it's still got a long way to go before we can actually cater to the world demand?
I believe that the kind of product categories that Havells is in, and I'm not talking here about garments, apparel, and all that because there's a lot of talk otherwise. But I feel in our categories there is definitely a huge potential for us to grow our exports, especially because Havells, for example, we've always maintained that we've always believed in manufacturing rather than importing and selling. 95% of what we sell, we manufacture in India, in-house, and we compete both on quality fronts and cost fronts. So it's not necessary that just by importing from China you can be cost competitive. We have made our manufacturing cost competitive as against China and globally competitive quality. So there is a potential with this China plus one strategy. I believe the global markets are open for India, and India has the potential to be a manufacturing hub for many of the product categories that we are in. I think it's just everything needs to come together. India needs to gain the confidence, and I think I believe the world is waiting for us.
Sure. What more steps other than what you just highlighted you think are required from the government for consumer durables as a sector per se?
I think the government is taking the right steps for consumer durables. I think we could not have asked for more with, this whole PLI, which is being brought in for air conditioners. The focus on manufacturing, I think that's the key. What could also help is the focus on, demand creation. I think one of the ways is actually to increase production and keep the costs low so that the consumers can buy more. Electricity has gone to small towns and rural areas. So there will be a demand for electrical appliances, white goods, air conditioners. The quality of electricity is also much better than what it used to be 3 or 4 years ago. So all the things are in the right step. I think one of the action points which may be left out is, the very high GST rate of 28% on air conditioners, which actually does not make that much sense because air conditioner is not any more a luxury product. It is being bought by, all stratas of the society. And I think otherwise, rest of the things, I think we are moving in the right direction.